We have a follower submission to read. This follower submitted story is, am I the astronaut for not inviting my dad to my vow renewal because he didn't go to my wedding? I, 36 male, married my wife, 36 female, 3 years ago in the middle of the pandemic and before any vaccines were available. We had a small ceremony in a small park in the middle of a city 4 hours away from where my dad and stepmother live. We had planned on live streaming the ceremony on Facebook for everyone that we knew who wouldn't or couldn't make it due to travel restrictions, and simply wanted our parents to be there to see us get married in person. My wife's mom and stepdad live only an hour from where we got married, so that was easy to manage. My dad and stepmom, on the other hand, were my only chance to have any family there with me since my mom and stepdad live in Europe. I sent my dad and stepmom the official invitation 6 months before the ceremony, and he said yes. Fast forward to 3 weeks before the wedding, I'm in the middle of packing up my things to change duty stations, #Navy life, and my wedding is going to happen at the tail end of this move. My dad called me to let me know that after a lot of deliberation, he made the decision to not attend the wedding after all because of his concerns with COVID-19. I remember feeling numb from that news and initially said that I understood and thanked him for letting me know. I finally felt again and got angrier and angrier the more I thought about it. It was a reasonable drive to an open-air venue where masking is encouraged and everyone but the bride and groom would be 6 feet apart. We were taking every precaution to make this happen, and yet he was still too scared to go. I know in my heart that if I were in his shoes, nothing would stop me from watching my son get married. I was effectively alone on my wedding day, but didn't let that stop me from enjoying the day. To this day, I haven't forgiven nor forgotten this, and to make matters worse, my wife and I have gone no contact with my stepmother for, to put it simply, saying mean things and refusing to take accountability for what she said.
Sounds like a whole other story right there.
Fast forward again to present day. My wife and I have recently joined a new church, and we already feel right at home. And we're talking with the head pastor to have a vow renewal at the church next summer before I head to my next duty station. We plan on inviting plenty more family members now that all travel restrictions have been lifted, and I'm currently stuck on whether my dad and his wife should get an invitation. They took what I see as a cowardly way out of the first time, and my vindictive side wants to invite everyone but them to send a message. My wife supports this move, and yet I feel a little hung up on this. How far out of line am I, Dusty? Am I the astronaut if I don't invite my dad to my vow renewal as revenge for him not coming to my wedding? Okay, so you guys haven't seen this content come out yet, but I think it's a good time to have this talk. Let's have this talk. We have talked about where there's kind of a spectrum of acceptable responses. And at the bottom of this, you have like what is allowed basically based on the amount of action that they took, right? And then at the top, you have like being the bigger person and forgiving and forgetting and all that crap. So you've got this in between there. That's where you can act and not be the asshole, right? So you can do this and not be the asshole for it. It's justified, where you are justified taking action based on the action that they took. But then I think the bigger question here is a theme that we talk about a lot in the podcast with Josh Smoots, and that is the statement that I've used for a while internally, kind of, that says, do what you want. And that doesn't mean just do whatever the hell you want. That means your actions should align with your goals in life. And in this case, your actions should align with the relationship that you want to have with your dad and your stepmom, or with just your dad, or whatever. I think it's less about what's acceptable based on context of their actions. And I think this becomes more of a what's acceptable to you based on where you want this to go from here. Do you want to have a long relationship, a close relationship, so that someday when you have kids, if you have kids, do you picture that bond between your dad and your kids being strong? Do you picture them having them close? And if so, then do what you want, meaning the action you should take now should put you a step closer to having that in the future. You are taking a step toward creating that future vision that you want. Now, if you could give a shit less and you don't see that happening because it's just not that kind of person, you haven't been that close, and whatever else come what may in there, then do what you want there too. And you have the right to say, no, I'm not going to invite them here because I don't need to take a step in that direction. You see where I'm going with this. I think it's less about where you're just a justified asshole for not inviting them here, and more about like, where does this take you in life, and where do you want it to go? And a lot of people had a lot of, call it rational, call it irrational fear that was heightened during that time, and they were too scared to do anything or go anywhere. I know my grandma was one of them. And some of that fear still exists there. with not being willing to get out and travel as much or go to as many event kind of things. So there is like a little asterisk toward your dad's actions because everybody was losing their minds and nobody knew what was going on and nobody knew it was safe. And although every precaution was being taken there, if they had a reason to be concerned, if they were immunocompromised or they had some other reason, then they have a little bit more weight thrown behind them. So it is complicated. All of that to say, you wouldn't be an asshole, but it might not be the direction you want this to go. And I think that's the more important question. That was a lot of words to say those few. Do what you want.